Welcome into another edition of the Penn State Blitz here on Penn Live. So much to talk about, including the fact that Greg Pickel and I are wearing the exact same shirt. A little weird, but I kind of like it. I don't mind it. Let's just keep trying. We'll try and go different colors moving forward. But Greg, there is so much to talk to.
Yes.
Talk about, excuse me, with Penn State football after that Iowa game. Last play of the game, I don't know that I've ever seen that. Loud environment, crazy comeback.
Yep.
They're 4-0. Indiana's coming in this week, but really we got to start this show with the one and only Saquon Barkley, number 26, 358 all-purpose yards. Greg, Penn State single game record. He had the leap, which no one's ever going to forget. What he can do as a runner, what he can do as a receiver. But James Franklin on Tuesday, Greg, he talked about, there are some things that Saquon does that go overlooked in other parts of the game. They really helped in the Iowa win.
Yeah, there's no question, Bob. You talk about the Iowa game and what Saquon Barkley was able to do, and everyone talks about the leap. Everyone talks about the 40-plus yard run when he was pinned to the sideline and somehow avoided a mess of Iowa defenders. But if you watch his blocking ability on a handful of plays, including the game-winning touchdown, he was heads up with Josie Jewell, the Iowa linebacker that has received numerous Defensive Player of the Week honors for his performance. It was outstanding, almost as good as Barkley was offensively. He was defensively. And Barkley picked him up and stuck him. And there were a few other instances like that as well. There was a time when Will Freeze was beat, and Barkley picked up the rusher and was able to allow Trace McSorley enough time to complete a first down throw. And he's a special kid because the running is what makes the highlights. The long passing plays is what makes the record book so far this season. But when he is asked to do all the little things, he does them better than almost anybody else in the country.
Yeah, that's first down. And James also pointed out that right before the half, Trace McSorley was hit as he threw an interception.
Yep.
And James singled out, it was Saquon Barkley, I think, fought through some people to make that tackle.
Right.
Iowa, I think, eventually scored on that drive, but it just says something about his competitive nature and his willingness to sacrifice and do all that's kind of required of him. He's not just in it to run the ball and get the yards. He'll do the dirty work. Right. I think that really says a lot about him as a player and as a teammate. That's first down, Greg.
Yep.
Second down, a little bit of a humorous take here. I'm beginning to wonder who is better at being James Franklin. Is it James Franklin or is it James Franklin impersonator Keegan Michael Key? We have a clip to show you right here.
I don't know what his issue is, okay? I'm a college football coach. When you're sitting on a lead that large, typically what you have to do is try to get a lot of your guys in there to get an opportunity to play. And at this particular point in time, I thought that was the best thing to do. Okay, everybody should get a little bit of experience as collegiate athletics. What happened was I got a little carried away. At that point in the game, I had two clarinet players from the band in there. I had a security guard, the equipment manager, and a Nittany Lion mascot. We're all in there at that time.
So, Greg, honestly, he does it so well. I'm not sure who does James Franklin better. That's not the first time that Keegan Michael, who has Penn State ties, has impersonated James, but that might have been his best one. I think he was in New York for game day.
Right.
And we bring that up because it's funny, but also James referenced it today.
He did, yeah. After the game, too, he spent a long time talking about Saquon Barkley and a number of other things that led Penn State to its win over Iowa. And then he gets to the end of it and he says, I feel the need to say this, and I can't believe I have to say it, but I was not in New York City at game day. I was not making those comments about the Georgia State field goal kicking situation. It just was not me. And then it came up today because Jim Pry, who's the father of Brent Pry, Penn State's defensive coordinator, his wife, Brent's mom, said, I thought that was you, James. And they've known each other for, probably 30 years. And that was a bit of a humorous part of the interaction today with James Franklin and the media. And I think that we'll probably be seeing more of this before we see less of it in terms of how good he is and how often they're able to use him.
I agree. I don't think we've heard or seen the last of Keegan Michael Key as James Franklin, especially if Penn State's season continues down this path. So that's a humorous look, and that's second down. Let's get a little bit more serious for third down. Penn State won the game. They're 4-0. The special teams have been largely very good this year, but there is one issue involving Penn State's all Big Ten kicker, Tyler Davis. He's 4 for 8
Yeah.
on field goal attempts this year. He had a miss and he had a block against Iowa. Last year, Greg, he made 22 of 24 field goals.
Yep.
James talked about this on Tuesday and said it's not really just about Tyler.
Right, and I think that, last week one of the things I wrote was that it was not time to worry about Tyler Davis in the field goal kicking game. A week later, I think it's a time to be a little bit concerned about it. They have a new snapper, Kyle Vasey, a new holder, Billy Fessler, and Bob, they're just struggling to connect. Sometimes it's a hold, sometimes it's a snap. And as James Franklin talked about today with the Iowa blocked kick, somebody overcompensated to block more Iowa players than they thought were going to come. They didn't end up coming that way. They actually came to the other side of that player, and it left one guy to block 3 Iowa players, and a handful of them came untouched, and they blocked a kick. So they have a lot to figure out. You mentioned Chaz Wright not being in the game. He traveled to Iowa, didn't dress, didn't play right tackle, didn't play special teams. He mentioned that being a key factor. They got to figure this out because at some point it's going to be costly.
Yeah, they still have to play Michigan. They still have to play Ohio State. Those figure to be close games.
Right.
And I just wonder if if this continues and he struggles or they get some blocks, will it influence James's thinking when it's 4th and 2 and they're at the other team's 30,
right,
where normally they probably would send Tyler out. I'm wondering if now maybe if he continues to struggle, maybe they decide to go for it because Joe Moorhead's not afraid to do that. But I think that the coaching staff's looking for a little bit more success. 50% in the Big Ten is just not going to cut it.
Right.
We're going to move now to 4th down. Another serious note, James Franklin was asked about what happened over the weekend in the NFL games, Greg.
Yep.
The protests regarding the national anthems, how teams decided to handle it, especially in light of what President Trump said about firing, protesters to the anthem on Friday.
Right.
James offered up a pretty thoughtful, I thought, response, and he was also asked about a video that Lamont Wade, Penn State's true freshman corner, posted on Sunday. Also very thoughtful. He had a pretty interesting take on both.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get too far on that, go back to the Iowa game. Some were wondering, Iowa was out on the field for the national anthem. Why was Penn State not out there? James Franklin said today that they follow a routine. They don't go out for the national anthem at home. They didn't go out for it. It was a routine thing, he said. People that follow the Iowa program says it's not uncommon for Iowa to be out there and the opponent to come out, not come out. So I don't think there's anything to read into there. Then he was asked about it on Tuesday, and he said pretty much the same thing he said last year after Penn State went to Michigan and a couple of Michigan players had protested as well. James was asked about it, and at that point in time, he had said that they didn't really have time to have a conversation about it with the team. Some guys had opinions on it. Some guys didn't really know what was going on. But they used a bye week last year to talk about all this stuff. So he said this year he talked to the leadership council and the team about it, and he let them go talk to their position groups or players, guys, younger guys, older guys, etc., and come back to him with any concerns, and they feel like they're in a pretty good shape with it. And as it relates to Lamont Wade, he just talked about that he was proud of the way he gave a thoughtful voice to his opinion, and he was fine with it, proud of it. And I think that, I don't know if this topic will be going away, but for Penn State, I think they're pretty happy with where they are on this matter. And I don't think that it's going to be something that causes a distraction or anything else going forward.
Yeah, and I think it bears repeating, Penn State's going to host Indiana 3:30 Saturday.
Right.
And just in case some people are wondering, Penn State is not on the field traditionally for the national anthem. The blue band's out there. It's kind of it's really their show.
Correct.
And then after the anthem concludes, James Franklin and the players run out onto the field. So just so you know, that's for people who are just interested now or just looking at it with regard to Saturday in light of what's happened, they're not going to be, they're not supposed to be on the field for the anthem. That's just the way that they handle things. So I would imagine that will probably continue on Saturday. Now, Greg, that's 4 downs. I'm looking off to see if we have a 5th down, and maybe, Greg, as we look in,
let's see
a
here,
possible question or comment.
Yeah, we got
from one of our many fans from the ride-along videos, no doubt.
Yeah, so let's start with Ed. He wants to know, what do we know about Indiana?
Yeah.
I think that it's an interesting conversation piece because they have a new offensive coordinator, they have a new head coach, and they have an interesting little setup on offense where they've been using 2 quarterbacks, and they also have a freshman running back, Morgan Ellison, that's been pretty explosive, not to mention Simi Cobbs, the receiver. Yeah,
and also defensively, I think we got to point out that last year they held Saquon Barkley to 58 yards on 33 carries. They probably defended him in the run game better than any team. They have some fine individual talent. T. Gray Scales, the linebacker, was an All-American last year. He's undersized, but he flies to the ball. They also have a pretty good corner, Richard Font, who had an intercepted a Trace McSorley pass. So it'll be interesting to see what Tom Allen, he was the defensive coordinator last year, head coach this year. I'm sure Penn State is aware of Indiana's approach last season, and there'll be some wrinkles, but Indiana presents a pretty unique challenge, and I'm sure Saquon Barkley is probably chomping at the bit to get another crack at the team that really kind of, I wouldn't say shut him down, but they really limited him, and there was really not a lot he could do about it. I don't think we'll ever see another day, Greg, where he carries 33 times for 58 yards.
Yeah,
do we have a six down?
We have one more. Go to six down. We're going to go to one more question, and this one is there enough? Is one football enough for this offense? And I think it brings up an interesting point because the receivers were key to Penn State to win this football game in Iowa. They came down and were clutching the stretch. Saeed Blacknell pointed out by James Franklin. Juwan Johnson, 2 catches on the final drive. People were looking for a lot out of this receiver group. Right now, the ball's been going to Barkley and Mike Gesicki, and I think that you saw more of the receivers. I know you wrote about it, the fact that this could be the jump-off point, if you will, for Juwan Johnson. And I think it's the rest of the passing game as well that we're going to see start to take off here.
Yeah, and also, there were some plays in the Iowa game. We were watching it from the press box that Penn State just missed on. Mike Gesicki was wide open for 40 or 50 yards on the pass that McSorley threw that was intercepted as he was hit right before half. He also had him up the right sideline, and he couldn't complete the pass. And also Brandon Polk on that 4th down play. Trace put it on the run right in his hands for the 4th down conversion, and Brandon couldn't hold on to it. I just think that as the season goes on, and the way that people now are going to have to just not only do they have to worry about Barkley as a runner, he's on pace for a 1,000-yard receiving season. He leads the team in catches. There should be a ton of opportunities for the receivers in the passing game. I do think there is enough footballs to go around, or enough. I think you will see them continue to spread it around, and all it's going to take is for these receivers to be a little bit more consistent. And then I think defenses are really, we haven't seen it yet, they're going to be really in trouble.
Yeah, Trace McSorley too. He get, a couple times their guys drop passes, a couple times he has not hit wide open guys. So you put those two things together. This Penn State offense already one of the better ones in the country. It's going to just continue to take off. You add Barkley into the mix. It's a hard team to stop, and that's why James Franklin talked today about the fact that, and I thought it was actually a pretty interesting point as it relates to people getting frustrated with their slow starts, because teams come out and show things they've never seen before, because every coordinator thinks he and his players have the key to stop Joe Moorhead's offense. You got to diagnose those things if you didn't game plan for them. So keep that in mind next time Penn State starts slow. There might be a reason for it, and they've shown pretty capable of figuring out how to deal with it.
Yeah, it's just funny. I mean, was it a slow start? They had 573 yards of offense. They just didn't finish. When they do finish, they're going to put 70 on somebody. It's just a question of, I don't think it's a question of if. It's a question of when. And speaking of that, it's about time to wrap up this edition of the Penn State Blitz. I think it's a great shirt choice.
I do. You as well, Bob.
And we might just wear the same shirts moving forward.
I think we should do it.
What was that movie with DeVito and Schwarzenegger, Twins? I think this is a modern-day version of it. I like it a lot. And also, before we go, please just remember to subscribe to Penn Live's Penn State YouTube channel, which has got just a ton of great stuff. If you haven't subscribed yet, you're missing out. Don't forget about that, and don't forget about us. That's it for this edition of the Penn State Blitz.